Mr. Robinson, good afternoon. Invest for Sight is really pleased to have you here in our studio on the sidelines of Gaidar Forum, arranged by the Academy of National Economy and Public Administration. And just to start with, I wonder, what's your overall impression of this forum and the way it has been arranged by an educational institution, which took the lead in bringing together over 19,000 people and bringing up so many topics and bringing in so many speakers and so on?
Yeah, so it's very impressive. I actually haven't seen anything like it in other parts of the world. Yesterday, I was able to attend the plenary session with the Prime Minister of Russia, prime ministers, former prime ministers, vice prime ministers of other countries, Singapore, Finland, talking about sort of what's going on in the political environment today, what's going on in the economy today, and what needs to be done to move the world further along. And it's quite impressive. So great speakers, great program, and great topics, very relevant for what's happening in society.
Right, and society is always concerned about education. And how much familiar are you with the way education is handled in various nations?
Yeah, pretty familiar. So AACSB is a global organization. We accredit 800 business schools around the world in over 50 countries. So we're very familiar with the worldwide education system.
That's quite impressive. And how many of them are in Russia?
So right now we have a number of member schools in Russia that are working on accreditation, but we've just started working on accrediting schools in Russia. So right now we have a number of member schools here, but they're just going through the accreditation process now. They should be finishing it in the next year or two.
In the next year or two, and therefore, how much is there? Are all those schools interrelated between each other? I mean, do you have a vast exchange of students or professors? Do you have the very same learning programs and materials and textbooks? How is it all arranged?
So the schools independently determine, based upon their local context, what they're training their students for, what curriculum, what types of programs they have. What we do is we bring them together to meet, to share ideas, what's working, what's not working, how can they improve. We have professional development programs for deans and faculty members on the latest teaching, online teaching, blended learning, and those types of things. And definitely our schools have student exchange programs, they have faculty exchange programs, they work collaboratively on research projects, and the students work collaboratively on research projects. They get experience of working virtually on teams around the world.
And faculty, do you have many faculty members from Russia?
So we actually do. So the dean here at International Business School, Sergey, is actually on our board at AACSB. So the Russian schools are very active with our association.
Great. And what do you think about the Russian students?
They're very strong. So I had an opportunity.
In what respect, in every subject or any particular field?
So I've certainly only been exposed to those students in business. So the last 2 years I've been attending the forum, they always have a student that's assigned us to help us get around, and I've been very impressed with how well they present themselves and their knowledge of business.
The only problem, well, maybe not the only, but one of the major problems, at least in Russia, with business education, to my personal view at least, is very high cost of such an education. Do you have scholarships? Do you have any programs to help people from least wealthy strata of population to attend?
So AACSB doesn't ourselves have scholarship programs, but if you actually look at business education, while I think that the traditional MBA programs can be quite expensive, the actual typical undergraduate business education is actually quite affordable, and certainly in line with undergraduate degrees in other areas. If you look at it, business education has a high return on investment. So while in some cases it can be costly, but not always, particularly if a student's going to a state institution, the tuition is usually reasonable. For private institutions or for some graduate programs, it can get to be expensive, but there's still a high return on investment even for those programs.
Do you think that government authorities are to be involved with promoting business education and supporting both the schools and the students?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I know here, if you look at the education regulations in Russia, I don't think business education is even mentioned. It's historically been more liberal arts, sciences, economics, if anything, in business, less the other business subjects. And so I do think that we could see some changes there so that business education, particularly masters, specialty masters in business, and the MBA is more recognized by the government.
Right. And your graduates, do you keep track of them? Can you name some names? The ones that everyone would know.
Warren Buffett. So
really?
Warren Buffett went to business school in Nebraska, and then he went to Columbia Business School as a graduate. So, he's probably one of the most well-known billionaires and certainly an idol of mine. But there are lots of examples of that. So we actually run each year a challenge for our business schools for them to nominate people that have gone to their business school that have gone on to do great things for business or for society. And there's, over the last couple of years, we've recognized hundreds of them, but there's probably millions out there. We can't recognize them all.
Well, really, that's quite impressive. But altogether, how many graduates have you got so far?
So AACSB, if you look currently at the institutions we accredit around the world, currently there's about 4 million current students. I don't know, if I added up, we've been around for 100 years. If we went back to all those schools, how many graduates it's a huge number, but we can't keep track of that. The individual schools do keep track of all their alumni, but AACSB doesn't. And a lot of our schools, particularly those in Europe and Asia, AACSB started in North America, and so we've only been in Europe and Asia for 6 years, and so a lot of schools here have just become accredited, and so we wouldn't really count their graduates from before accreditation.
And having mentioned Asia, it's quite a huge market for expansion, well, in every respect, including education. Would you agree with such a claim?
Yeah, absolutely. So we estimate that there's somewhere around 15,000 business schools in the world, and about half of those are in the Asia-Pacific region. So a lot of high-quality business schools, just like here in Russia, and it's certainly a market where we're interested in bringing those high-quality business schools into AACSB. In fact, while our organization's headquarters is in Tampa, we have an office in Amsterdam, an office in Singapore, and I personally just taken an apartment in Singapore, and I'm spending about 75% of my time in the Asia-Pacific region.
Wow. So the time for amateurs and untrained and unprofessional entrepreneurs is going by, and it's about to be in the past pretty soon. So the next generation professional and successful businessman is to be well educated, well connected, well oriented. To start with.
Yeah, so typically, maybe 1 in 5 new businesses are successful, or new products, probably even less than that. The one advantage of going to business school today is they have a lot of programs for entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. So you have an opportunity while you're a student to try out your ideas, to pitch them to alumni and other investors. And a lot of these business schools have these entrepreneurship centers where they help the students develop a product or a service. And so you get to practice doing that a few times before you go out into the real world and try and start something from scratch. So I think it's very useful today.
And do you teach your students those new technologies like blockchain, fintech? Well, you know them all.
Yeah, so it's today we have to expose students to a variety of technologies. We want them to be technologically agile when they graduate, so they're familiar with a number of platforms, but those platforms are going to change continuously. So we have to teach them how to continue to learn when new technologies come about, which is going to happen every year. And so it's not just about learning the current technologies, but in general, how do you deal with changing technology and learn to use the new technology effectively.
And to do that, you also have to have your faculty also tuned to the most up-to-date developments.
Yeah, we
How
do.
do you manage that?
Yeah, so it is difficult because a lot of the faculty are quite different than the current students. For the most part, we've got millennials for students, and we have my generation, the baby boomers, that are oftentimes in the classroom. So it requires that those faculty members keep themselves up to date. We offer, for example, an online teaching effectiveness course that faculty can take. A number of schools are sending their faculty back to learn things like data analytics. They're also co-teaching, so they're bringing professionals into the classroom to work with faculty members on those leading edge technologies that the faculty members may not be familiar with. So it's really important to bring current practitioners in to work with the students as well, not just doctorally trained faculty members.
I see. So basically speaking, there is no such a notion as, let's put it this way, technological generation gap between your students and faculty.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for your time and opinion, and I wish you every success. And I really hope that you are going to be well present in this country, because one of the problems that we do have here is bringing up our education to the best standards available elsewhere. And I'm absolutely sure that you will help us to overcome that problem.
It was my pleasure. From what I've seen, it's already happening. So thank you.